Okay, so class participation. How many of you guys like class participation? No, very few of you? Awesome. Well, we're going to all be involved with it anyway. So, I'm going to give you the second most important thing that I'm going to tell you today first, and I'll end with the most important thing that I'm going to tell you. All right? So the second most important thing, and before we get into it, I want to ask you guys a question. Why are you here? Not philosophically, like why did you make the decision to come to this conference today?
Learn.
Okay, to learn.
To learn more about how to make my soil more healthy and more productive.
Perfect. Mike, why did you come?
To meet my favorite YouTube celebrity.
Awesome. I appreciate that. Shout out. Who else?
Economics of grazing and assistance.
Okay, perfect. All right. Anybody else?
I want to expand my circle of support.
That is a great reason to come to a conference like that. I love that. Okay. Anyone else want to share why they came? Okay. I came to this conference for two reasons. I come as a speaker, and then I come as someone who's like you guys, learning from other people to build my network and to acquire and gain wisdom. But do you guys realize when you come into a room like this, or you come to a conference like this, the way you think about yourself greatly affects what you're going to get out of the conference. So let me give you an example, right? If I come into this room and I'm like, oh my gosh, like I'm definitely going to screw something up. Like I always say infiltration when I mean filtration. I've got a friend that loves my YouTube videos. He's like, dude, you're killing me. Stop saying infiltration. Say filtration. You're saying it wrong. You know, or I'm like, oh, I'm going to screw up organic nitrogen and inorganic nitrogen. I'm going to say them wrong. And if I walk into this room and I'm so focused on all the ways I'm going to bomb and screw up, like I totally botched that opening prayer, right? If my mind is just so focused on how bad I'm going to do, what's going to happen? I'm going to do bad. But if I walk into this room and I'm like, man, we're going to have a blast. We're going to talk about the soil and all the life within the soil. And we're going to be able to come away from this meeting knowing the way that God created and intended for us to utilize the land that we have so that we can have better tools and become better farmers and become the best versions of ourselves. And everybody that's in here that's excited and wanting to do that is going to gain off my energy, and we're all going to, everybody that wants that leaves from here better people. Which is going to have a better effect? Right? Which one's true? They're both true. I'm going to screw something up. But the thing is what you focus on in this room and what you take away from this conference, the way you think about yourself, greatly influences how well you're going to be able to execute and become a better farmer and better version of yourself. Okay, let me grab my clicker that I set there. I forgot where it was. So, there's no shortcuts to being your best. When I come to a conference like this, I'm not coming just to learn. I'm coming with the mindset of when I get to hear Jay Fuhrer is going to share knowledge with me, and that iron is going to sharpen iron. And so I'm going to glean from what Jay Fuhrer taught me. My buddy Roy Foltzgraff, who I'm good friends with, when I hear Roy talk, and I think of all the ways that Roy is just way ahead of the game and doing so much better than me, I don't get intimidated by how much smarter Roy is than me. I take what Roy knows and I think to myself, I can become a better farmer because I know Roy Foltzgraff, and our iron is going to sharpen iron. But if you guys have that growth mindset and that desire to become better farmers and having the right mindset, you have to accept something. There are no shortcuts to becoming the best version of yourself. And when I have YouTube channel, like with my YouTube channel, I have a YouTube channel like Mike mentioned. On my channel, one of the most common questions I get is, where can I buy this compost? How can I do that? And most of those questions are framed in a way of, how can you help me so that this is the easiest possible thing for me to do? Like, what can I do to cut the most shortcuts and get there the fastest way? And the answer is that there are no shortcuts to becoming great at something. If you want to become great, if you want to become the best farmer that you can be, there are no shortcuts. You have to pay the price for greatness. If you want greatness, you have to pay the price. And the problem is so many of us, we are terrified to fail. And we are so afraid of failure, and we're so afraid of the unknown, that rather than try something new and try to change and find something out, we would rather fail doing what we know than step out into the unknown and do something that's scary and something that's challenging and something that I don't know about. I go to a conference every single year since I got into regenerative agriculture in Burlington. And there's a handful of people that I see every single year at this conference. And at the beginning, like I started noticing they were coming every year, and I would ask them, what are you going to do differently? Like, what did you learn from this conference? Like you, I want to find other people in my area that I can network with. And sometimes our answers are like, I don't know, I might try a different cover crop. Like, you just found out about compost extract. You just found out about interseeding cover crops with like companion cropping. You just found out about all these things, and you're going to try one new species of cover crop? You're going to try that little tiny thing? I don't want to take all these risks. We're in a dry environment. And they have every single excuse in the world for why they're not going to implement what they just learned. They were just given all the blueprint to do all these amazing things, and because of fear, they allowed themselves to just stay put and not be challenged. Have you guys anybody read the book Escape from the Deep? Oh man, if you guys love World War II stuff, Escape from the Deep has to be on one of the top of your list. So the Escape from the Deep is about the tragedy of the USS Tang. So the USS Tang was the most decorated sub during World War II. On their last patrol, they left Pearl Harbor and they went out to the, I believe it's the, I can't remember the sea. I don't know if it's the Sea of Japan, but straight in between China and Japan, and they were sinking ships. And so their last torpedo, they would always hunt above the surface. Like the commander of the Tang, Dick OKane, who's actually awarded the Medal of Honor for his bravery and the way he changed him and his commanding officer that he had before he was awarded the Tang. He was awarded the Medal of Honor because they changed submarine warfare. It used to be that you would be on the sub and you would hunt from below the surface. Well, they're like, we can kill way more ships if we are hunting above the surface and hunting these guys out. And they're like, yeah, but you're exposed, you're going to get killed. But they're like, no, we don't care. And so they did that anyway, even though they were not supposed to, even though they were breaking orders doing it. And they did it, and they get back, and they're like, we sunk this many tonnage of ships. And they're like, how did you do that in such a short amount of time? Well, we did it this way. And they're like, you're not supposed to do that. Well, we did. And they were so successful, they didn't even care that they were disobeying orders. They just changed the way that submarine warfare was fought. So on this ship, on their last torpedo, it made a circular rung, and the torpedo comes around and comes back and strikes the tank. They're above the surface, and so OKane had gone out to the top to watch this last torpedo fire. And so as he's trying to command them to move the sub because he sees it coming, they're not able to get out of the way, and it gets hit. And so the sub sinks with, I think, about a handful of men on top. And so of those handful of men, only 3 survived that. But 9 men survived the sinking of the Tang. The Tang goes down and goes to the bottom of the sea, and it's 180 feet deep. The men that survived the Tang escaped the largest ascent from the depths of the ocean that any human being has ever escaped from. And they did it with half of the crew members surviving. They all made it to the forward torpedo room. There was 90-some people on this submarine, and those remaining survivors, which there was about 40 of them, made it to the front of the torpedo room, okay? And when you get in there, to get out of the submarine, you have to go into they're called the forward ballast tanks. You get inside the forward ballast tanks, and you have to make the pressure of the forward ballast tanks the exact same of the pressure outside. Otherwise, your body can't handle it. Well, when you pressurize that thing, the inside of that, you're thinking all the pressure of the water, and it feels like you're being crushed from within this ballast tanks. The first 4 men that got in there passed out. They had to drag their bodies out. And so the other 2 guys freaked out and didn't go because one guy left early, and they could hear him pounding on the outside because he got lost, and he drowned. So the rest of the guys started freaking out. And so they had men go in there, and some made it to the top, some didn't. but most of the men in the submarine grabbed blankets and went and laid down and died. Because they were so afraid of being crushed and they were so afraid of the bends. When you are in a submarine like that and you ascend to the top, if you ascend too quickly, nitrogen, I don't know how to explain it perfectly, but nitrogen pools up in your blood too quickly and it explodes and it kills you from your basically your blood vessels exploding within inside you. So they were also afraid of the bends that they did not risk leaving the tang, and only 6 men were able to escape from the deep, even though 40 made it there. And unfortunately for us in farming, I feel like that's the same way when farming. So many people are so afraid of trying new principles and stepping out into the unknown that they would rather continue to farm in a way that they know that they're destroying the soil. They know that their soil is being blown off in these major wind events. And yet, rather than change, they would rather see that happen in their fields. And that breaks my heart, but that's the way so many people are. So I encourage you guys, have a resilient mind. One thing I want to cover too, hey, cold water therapy. Have you guys ever heard of this? Do you guys know what that is? What is, somebody that knows, what is cold water therapy?
When the wife takes too much hot water.
So cold therapy is the process of either getting an ice bath for a short amount of time or taking a shower, like 2 to 3 minutes, 5 times a week, so that you have 11 minutes a week in cold therapy. All right. The reason that this is beneficial is because it boosts your metabolism by increasing the amount of brown fat that you have in your body. It also boosts your immunity. See what I'm talking about? We're about screwing up words. No big deal. It boosts your immune system. And then it also, if you have a risk for Alzheimer's, like if you have a genetic test and you find out you're at risk for Alzheimer's, you're 60 times less likely to get Alzheimer's if you do cold therapy than if you don't do cold therapy. All right, so it has all these benefits. The thing that I love about it the most is that they found that if you do this cold therapy, you begin to build a resilient mind. And they believe it's because you're going through the process of taking a cold shower, which what? Sucks. That cold water, you're jackhammering, you're shivering. If you teach yourself to breathe smoothly, control your breathing, and think about the endorphins you're going to release as soon as you get out of the shower, because once you warm back up, it releases endorphins, and it is awesome. So if you're a person like me, I love to get up and pray in the morning. If you're an early riser, this is the best thing for you, because if you wake up and you go through that, you're alert and you're ready to face the day, and it teaches your brain that if you have a resilient mind and are able to go through that pain to get the reward later, you begin to build up resilience in other areas of your life. You begin to associate things that are terrible, or like that you know that there's going to be a reward over, you can handle and walk through that reward. And that's important for us to understand, because so many times we have this mindset when we get into farming or getting to regenerative, we're afraid of trying something new. And so many times when you do a diet, people fail at diets all the time. Why? They suck, right? Okay, and that's part of the problem. Is what if and the same thing happens with soil health. All right, if I told you guys I've been on a diet for a week and I've lost 2 pounds, and I said I only lost 2 pounds, my goal was 30 pounds, I need to quit. I didn't hit my goal. My goal was to lose 30 pounds. What would you tell me?
Suck it up.
Suck it up. Why? Why shouldn't I just quit now?
You don't build any character unless you get past your sucking.
Right. Okay. So listen. If I do a diet, am I going to lose 30 pounds in 1 week? No. If I've been destroying my soils for the last 100 years and I do regenerative agriculture principles for 1 year, am I going to do any difference to my soil? No. I'm going to do a small amount, just like a person losing weight loses a small amount. You can't tell in 1 week if you're on a path to losing weight, but you see somebody later on and there's a huge change, just like Jay Fuhr's ground. You see a huge change now. You probably didn't see a huge change the first year. If you're going to adapt these principles, you may not see a change in the first year. But you have to have that resilient mind that says, I'm going to go through that. So that's the second most important thing I'm going to tell you guys today. It's pretty long-winded on it. I'm probably halfway through already. Acquire wisdom. If you're going to have a resilient mind, you need to make the decision that you're going to acquire wisdom every single day. These are 4 scientists. I didn't pick 4 farmers. I picked 4 scientists that I wanted to share with you. And the reason is because so many times people want to get on YouTube and they want to follow what another farmer's doing because they want to learn from what that farmer's doing. But we need to get into a mindset that we want to understand the science behind it. Because if I understand the science of what is taking place within my soils, and I know what an exudate is, and I know that exudates build aggregates, and I know that those aggregates are what build soil structure, and I know that aggregates attract mycorrhizal fungus to the rhizosphere, and I know that exudates attract the bacteria and the fungus I need to grow a healthy plant, then I'm going to be better equipped as a farmer to know why I'm going to stick it out and keep doing these soil health principles. It's no longer about for me like raising cattle. It's about I want to put my soils in the healthiest possible position. This is a great book. If you have not read this book, you need to read this book, For the Love of Soils by Nicole Masters. She goes through and she talks about the different farmers that she's interacted with in the United States, but I feel like the most valuable thing that she has in this book are the last 2 chapters where she talks about how if we have a healthy system, then our plants will fight off any kind of parasitic fungus, bug, disease, or anything because they'll be resilient. They'll be able to you won't be attacked by insects because insects want to attack an unhealthy plant. They will pick an unhealthy plant over a healthy plant. And then same thing with parasitic funguses. If you have beneficial funguses within your plant and they have this symbiosis relationship, then you're going to be able to have you spray compost extract we're going to talk about on your wheat. Well, those fungus are going to get within the stomata of your plant, and then you're not ever going to have to spray for stripe rust because you applied this compost extract that's going to be beneficial to your plant. So that's a great book to get into. This is my lovely family. I just show that because a lot of people show their family, so there's my lovely awesome family. All right, where we started in 2015. I farmed with my dad and my granddad, and I had 8 quarters of ground, and I farmed because it was my job. I was not passionate about it. It was just something that I did. And so we had no cover crops, no cows. We wean calves. We buy wean calves in November and we sell them in March, and our rotations were fallow, wheat, corn, and I was really set on no-till at that time, and Dad was beginning to come out of no-till because it was too expensive. And I was like, well, I'm not going to quit because I built up all this, in the whole whopping 8 years I've been farming, I've been doing no-till and I didn't want to quit. So he was starting to till most of our ground when I found out about cover crops. So in March, I was at a friend's house and I learned about what cover crops are. And so I was hooked because I always had a dream to raise cattle. My county is the least populated county in all of Kansas, and it has the least amount of livestock in all of Kansas. So there's not a whole lot of grass that you can just go out and purchase. And so when I saw Gabe Brown raising cattle on cover crops, I was like, well, I'm hooked. And so I decided that I better kind of figure this thing out before I talk to my dad. So I spent all of 1 month watching YouTube videos and reading as many articles as I could before I came to my dad and said, hey, we're going to raise a cow-calf operation I'm going to raise a cow-calf operation on cover crops. Are you in? And my dad's like, oh, what a crop? I'm like, a cover crop. He's like, what the heck is a cover crop? And so I just went all through this stuff. He's like, you're telling me you're going to put cow-calf pairs on farm ground, like that we farm corn and stuff on? I was like, yeah. He's like, that's going to destroy it. I was like, no, we'll be fine. I watched this YouTube video. Like, everything's awesome. And he's like, okay, like he goes, okay, you do all this research and you do it, and if it works out, great, but I'm not going to invest any time, money, or effort into it. And so his thought process is this is a great opportunity for Jay to fail and learn that you don't change tried and true methods and stuff. So I planted cover crops in April, and I bought 15 registered pairs, and I got the opportunity to sell bulls with Aaron Kravik. So now we have 130, and I forgot about I bought some cows that had embryos I put in there. So we have 140 cows, 30 bred heifers, 80 replacement heifers, and we're running 155 steers. And then we're going to sell between 30 and 50 bulls. It just depends on which ones make the cut. All on cover crops and on our corn stalks and milo stalks. So since 2016, my granddad's passed away, and I had the opportunity to buy his half of Young and Son. And my dad and I started Young Red Angus in 2016, and after that first year and a half of doing it, Dad said, "You're right, this is working, and I'm doing too much work within it." And so I said, "You're right," and so I sold half of Young Red Angus to my dad. All of our irrigated circles are cover crops and no-till. We farm 8,000 acres of dry land, and this year we're down to tilling 3 fields. And so in that whole process, it's been awesome seeing my dad change. He hates change. He hates the unknown, and so it's been great working with him because I help him to change, and he helps me from going bankrupt because I have a lot, most of my ideas end up blowing up my face. So like I said, I got started because I love cattle, and I always wanted to have a cow-calf operation. It just wasn't in the works. And then when I found out about cover crops, I was all in. And this kind of goes back to having a resilient mind. So when I decided I was going to do a cow-calf operation, I'm super excited about this opportunity to do it, but you also have to remember, if I have never owned a cow, have I ever helped a cow or a bred heifer calve? No. So how many of you guys have never raised cattle? Okay. Peyton, do you think that would be kind of overwhelming if you had 50 or 20 bred heifers that had a calf?
My bones were already sweating.
Yeah. So I asked a bunch of people's advice and went into it. I would have one that was struggling in calving, and I would go out there and I'd say, "Hey, this one hasn't calved." Uncle Mark, who's a vet, I'm like, "What do I do?" It's like 1 o'clock at night, and he's answering my question. He's like, "Well, stick your hand in there and see tell me what you feel." So I'm like, "Okay, I clearly feel a head and a hoof." He's like, "You feel 1 hoof or 2?" 1. He's like, "Okay, you got a hoof back. Stick your hand in there, pull the other hoof out." I'm like, "All right." Pull the other hoof out. All right, what do I do now? I'm like, pull the rest of it out before it dies, dummy. So, I helped this one calve. The next year I'm like, "Hey, I've got a new problem." And he's like, "What's your problem?" I'm like, "Well, the head is upside down and the feet are above it. Like, what do I do?" He's like, "Push it, the one leg back, turn it clockwise, pull the leg out, pull it out." I'm like, "Okay." So all those things in my mind are so frightening and terrifying. Like, what if I lose one? What if one dies? And all these things that don't really matter once you do them. Right? It's the same thing when you guys are looking into doing something that you hear today. You're like, "That sounds like 60-inch corn with cover crops in between." Well, what if my corn doesn't yield as well? Okay, well, if it didn't work out, then try it again another year, and then if it doesn't work out, then do something else. It's not that big of a deal. I've failed at almost all the things I've tried, except for the things that were successes, and we move on with the successes, stop the failures. On these cows, when you have a calf like that turns out like that, you know that you're doing something right. When your smallest heifer, bred to your smallest bull, produces a freak, you use those genetics and you move on with those genetics because you find something that it works. And it's the same thing with your operation. When you find a system that's working, you take that and you keep using it to. I'm really excited about this bull because his dam's udders are perfect. His feet are perfect, and so many of the Angus animals that I used in the beginning, when you get them, their feet are their toes are look like lobster claws, and it's like, I can't move on with those genetics. But when you find something that works, you keep going on with it. When you find a cover crop system that works, you keep utilizing it. So this is how we graze our cattle on cover crops. We do rotational grazing on our irrigated circles. We do winter mixes on our irrigated circles. So when the corn is harvested, we plant cereal rye or beardless trit, and lately it's been mostly beardless trit. This happens to be cereal rye. We plant that cereal rye behind our irrigated circles, and we do rotational grazing. Like if you think of a circle, there will be a pie going back to the center pivot so we can get water if the irrigation wells happen to be on. So we would move these pairs, and I believe this is early May, every single day. This is what it looks like from the north looking south, and this is what it looks like from the top of the pivot looking out at the cattle. So you can see how they were on this pie, and they're on that pie. They'll be on that the next day, and this is a closer look. And as you zoom in, so we fertilized that cereal rye, and it did not look all that fantastic. This is beardless trit. Similar situation, planted after we pulled silage off of this field. It's a lot more lush and green this year, this was in 2022, than it was in 2020. And it just shows you, like, and they're different fields, but this is how it always looked in the beginning. It was a struggle to get things going immediately after the corn crop because our system was so broken. Like, it's hard for that to even get a response. This isn't, like, we didn't put any fertilizer down with this. So once you begin to heal your system, I'm really excited because if this is what we're seeing just within the first few years of doing it, what are the possibilities of what it's going to unlock when we've been doing it for 20 years, when we've been doing it for 30 years? So winter mixes, I try to stay cheap on winter mixes. When you have wheat, it's the cheapest, but it builds the least amount of soil structure because its root system is pretty weak. Cereal rye is great because it has an aggressive root system, but when you're grazing cattle on it, the regrowth is not as awesome as beardless trit. So that's why I've been leaning more towards beardless trit recently. Cereal rye has its place. It's more winter hardy, like you can plant it later into the winter. I've got friends in Kansas that have planted on December 25th. So that's, diversity at that time when you're planting it is kind of a challenge. If we get it in after September 10th, I just go with whatever species of beardless trit or cereal rye I'm going with. Dryland, this is oats on dryland. It's an oat cover crop mix that has multiple species in it. So this is an 80-acre pasture, and this is just a different view from that same pasture, but we would just give it strips, and I, just guess, like, I think this is about the size I need for, a day, and they would mow that down, and I'd realize, okay, they've got a little left, so I'll leave them a little bit longer, and then once I got it kind of figured out how much they were eating, I would just move them every single day. We'd have to move the tanks every other day. It is kind of a hassle, but it's the best thing for your soil, and you kind of just roll with the punches on things like that. When you have time to do this, you do it. When you don't have time to do it, you realize you could be doing better, but you're also harvesting wheat or doing whatever, and you aren't always able to do rotational grazing like you want. I love how it incorporated that. You got good coverage on the soil. I don't do spring mixes anymore. It doesn't mean that I won't go back to it once our system is healed, but I don't do it now because if you don't have rain and it's dry in the spring, which it usually is dry in the spring, then you're going to be growing a field of kochia that is really hard to kill when you bring the cattle off in the end of June, beginning of July. So I have not messed with spring mixes on our dry land. On our irrigated, where we have limited water, I'll put an inch of water down. We'll plant it. I'll put an inch later, and then I'll just leave it, and that seems to get it going the way I want it to. So we utilize the oats when we have it on our irrigated mix. So on those mixes, I do oats. I don't mess with other cereals just for worrying about them getting lump jaw from the beards and stuff. So I like utilizing oats, and I put rape, daikon radish, flax, red clover, spring peas, and as many mixes as I can. I always have those, and then I play with other stuff to see what will work. On our summer mixes, summer mixes are what I use on our dry land. When I'm doing a fallow period, I throw a summer mix in because it's the best way to fight weed pressure for us. So if I've got a field where I know that weed pressure is going to be bad, I'll spray a pre-emergent, which a lot of people say is a no-no. I still do it because I'm fighting weed pressure, and my soils are not where I want them to be. So until I get them where I want them to be and I have less weed pressure, that's what our practice is. We spray a pre-emergent, we plant that in June, and there's enough time past that it fights off the weeds and we get a good stand on our cover crop. So this is I do summer mixes on our dry land and our irrigated, just depending what we have available. So this was 2020, and this was this is 2020, no, it's 2019, okay? So this number up here is just the field section. When it works, when it rains, summer mixes are a home run. So this field right here, we had 120 pairs out there for 60 days. So you can get a lot of grazing, and that's 120 acres. So 120 pairs on 120 acres for 60 days. You can get a lot of grazing done when you do it rotationally, and you have the moisture. This is on an irrigated circle, and we didn't have to irrigate it. We got so much rain that year that we didn't even turn on the irrigation for the pivots until July. That's the only time that Dad had ever gone that long without ever turning on the pivots. So with our cover crops, we never had to turn it on. This is what the cows looked like there in August. Like, you couldn't see them if you had to step on top of the Ranger. One day the electricity went off and a cow ate the polywire and it killed her because she ate so much of the polywire. Well, then I couldn't find them, so they got 60 acres of the field because I couldn't find them to bring them back and to fix the polywire. This is what it looks like in a drought. So it greened up after it rained. So this is the best it looked all summer. We had pearl millet in here in this mix with sorghum Sudan. You can see the sorghum Sudan heading out. But we had pearl millet in this one as well. You can see the difference on the growth on the cows. Like the pearl millet's clear above them, and here it's barely above the calves. So we did not get the same amount of days of grazing. And so what you do is you give them a bigger area and you move them quicker. So if I'm going to get to it early, then I'll pick a mix that I can get to early. So I won't put sorghum Sudan grasses in the mix. I'll do a higher rate of millets, or if it's early enough, I'll just do corn, sunflowers, buckwheat, daikon radishes, turnips, and that's what I'll do early. And I might add a little bit of oats, but I don't want the oats to overtake it, so there'll be a low population of oats and a lot of corn. If I'm getting to it early. If I'm able to get to it later, then we definitely incorporate the BMR sorghum, the sorghum Sudans, the sun hemp, cowpeas, sunflowers, and like, this is a small list. Whenever you're picking a cover crop mix, as often as possible, you want 8 species or more. The reason is because plants share micronutrients with one another. So, and they will not share micronutrients with the same species. So corn will not share micronutrients with another corn plant. It sees it as a competitor because corn specializes in harvesting a certain micronutrient. So it pulls up, it's like me and Kevin are the corn, and we bring steak to the party. Well, we're not gonna share steak with each other. But if me and Mike come to the party and you have potatoes, well, I'll share my steak with you and you share potatoes with me, right? And so we'll work with each other, but I see Kevin as a competitor. I'm like, his filet mignon sucks. Like, I'm gonna give you KC strip. Don't even interact with Kevin, right? So they see it as competitors. And so it's important to remember that when you pick a mix, have as much diversity as possible, and like try to have 2 of each species. So try to have 2 grasses, try to have 2 brassicas, try to have 2 legumes, and try to have 2 broadleaves, okay? I have a YouTube video that gets more in depth about how we're rotating them and what months or what on everything. So if you see my mug on the YouTube video that says Grazing Cattle on Cover Crops Year Round, you found the right video. How I've changed. So the first years from 2016 to 2020, all I focused on was cover crops and what cover crops would work the best in western Kansas and what I could get the most days of grazing out of my cattle on. I would go to conferences and I would hear people like Dr. Christine Jones talking about exudates and talking about mycorrhizal fungus and talking about aggregates, and I'd be like, those are a lot of big words that I have no idea what she's saying. And so I would be intimidated, and I'd think, well, I'm not nearly as smart as this person or this person or this person. And so I wouldn't even try to learn what she was saying. It would just went over my head, and I'm like, I don't even need to care to learn about what she's talking about because I'll never understand it. And so I was at one of her talks one time, and she was talking about how you will never be able to eliminate FOS if you don't, you'll never be able to produce exudates off your roots if you don't eliminate FOS. And so you'll never get to where you want to be soil health-wise if you don't eliminate FOS. And I was like, oh, dang it. There's that big word she usually uses, and I have no idea what the heck she's talking about, but she's saying I'll never get where I need to go if I don't eliminate phosphorus. So I realized I have to I have to understand this on the scientific level and be able to understand these terms. Otherwise, I'm never going to be able to grow as a farmer. I'm always going to be stuck in this mode that I'm currently in. And so that's when the switch began to change for me. Like when I see all these other speakers, especially like at this conference, I don't have the knowledge Jay Fuhrer has. So I used to think about that, or Christina Jones or whatever, and I would think about that. I'm like, I'm intimidated. I'll never be at where they're at because I'm Jay Young, who grew up with dyslexia, has learning abilities, and I'll never be that way. But now my mindset is iron sharpens iron, and what one man can do, another man can do. And so I may not be there yet, But the way I think, if I'm going to become greater and become better than myself, then I'm going to think the way this other person would think. So if they're going to research this and they're going to put in the work, then I'm going to research it and I'm going to put in the work. Because I'm capable of doing what any other farmer is capable of doing. And I'm going to become the best version of myself. I'm not going to have, the best version. I'm not going to ever be Roy Foldsgraf. I don't have to be Roy Foldsgraf. I need to be the best version of Jay Young that I can be. And that's the way you guys need to see it too. You need to be the best version of what you can be. You don't have to become somebody else, but you need to learn the discipline and the hard work they have to get where they were so that you can go down that same path and accomplish the same things that they're accomplishing. All right, don't be intimidated. Say no to fear. Stop saying I can't. You want to have a mindset that says I can figure that out. I can do whatever challenges that you want to step into. Most people fail. When you think about that diet thing that I talk about, most people fail at diets because they're so focused on the goal that as they're going through that journey and it's hard and they don't want to do it, that they quit because they lose track in the journey. You have to become excited about the journey. You have to become excited about what you don't know and what you get to learn. And how, when you make a mistake, you get excited that you get to learn a new process. Everybody hates making mistakes. If you have that mindset that you hate making mistakes, you're never going to grow. If you see a mistake as an opportunity for growth, it's going to change who you are as a farmer. Okay, so I'm going to fly through these because I've talked way too much about other stuff. You want a living root in the ground. These are the 6 soil health principles. You want a living root in the ground at all times, okay? I have a video on this. It's called The Greatest Farming Channel on YouTube and the 6 soil health principles. It's a joke, it's not me. This was a big breakthrough for us. This was the first year I found earthworms on our dryland ground, so I was really excited about that. So as long as possible, remember in your context, in eastern Colorado and western Kansas, you may not be able to have a living root in the ground at all times. If you harvest your corn and it's not going to come up, do not put a seed in the ground after you take your corn off. Otherwise, you'll run that disc drill through the ground, you'll have a 50-mile-an-hour wind event, and all your topsoil and hard work will be gone. So build up your soil health before you get too far into living root in the ground at all times. Integrate livestock. If you don't have livestock, pay your friend to do rotational grazing on your ground and get it in somehow. This is another picture, and again, that's just another site of how much we've been able to change things. Armor on the soil. Another shot of armor on the soil. No-till and minimal disturbance. So when we do our irrigated circles, we plant green into it, and it's really important. If you're going to get anywhere, you have to stop tilling. If you're tilling your ground, you're killing the biology that lives within your soil, and you're not ever going to get where you need to go because you're constantly killing the life that you need to have a healthy plant. Plant diversity is huge. So when you have a cover crop species mix, like I said, have 8. And then I think this is the key. This is why this works. Sorry, I kind of need to go over this. This is a cover crop mix in 2019. All right, this is taken the same day. This is a monoculture of corn. All right, this is, you can see the tassels there, that has corn in it. This has twice as many plants per acre as that. Why is this lush and green and that's dying? If there's more plants taking up more moisture, why is that still green? Tell me, somebody that knows, tell me. Why is the cover crop green? We talked about it earlier with the party.
They're sharing nutrients.
They're sharing micronutrients, and a plant that is getting micronutrients from another plant becomes more drought tolerant. The same thing happens when it's grazed. If a plant is grazed, it stresses it and it puts out more exudates to attract more mycorrhizal fungus, more bacteria, more all the types of fungus in your soil. So if this is true, then I've got to figure out in my operation, my contacts, what other plants I can plant with corn that's going to have it green all summer long and never turning like that. We as farmers have to unlock that key because every single area, I don't care what environment you live in, there is a plant that you can plant with a cash crop that will make that cash crop more hardy and more tolerant. And I implore every single one of you guys to buy some cheap equipment and start interseeding cover crops within your corn, within your milo, or whatever it is, because I believe that we can unlock the key to having a really hardy and drought tolerant plant because they're sharing micronutrients with one another. So, you know, I bought a 520 disc drill that worked really well for interseeding cover crops. We just bought a Henniker. If you want to look into buying one, a Henniker is a company that makes a full machine that you can interseed cover crops within. Flax, cowpeas, African cabbage, okra, and radishes have all worked in our area to interseed. Plant at V6 or V2 to V6. Do not fly on your cover crops. In our area especially. If you live where it rains, you know, 30 to 40 inches a year, have at it. Our area, you have to have that seed in contact with the soil. So the soil health principles are building soil structure with the aggregates. They're increasing water filtration with your aggregates. They're building biodiversity, building topsoil, keeping your biology alive, and creating sustainability. I'm sorry I flew through all that stuff, but I want to get to the compost extract, which is really important. All of you guys that still till, this is what we're doing. You will never get away from this if you keep tilling. My neighbor tilled all summer long, didn't have moisture to plant, he dusted in his wheat. This is my field I got into the EQUIP program that was cover crops for 3 years in a row that I was so excited about what I was building in 3 years. And in one day, 30 acres of my field is gone because his blew onto mine, and once it was blowing, it was gone. And it's a good thing that I love that guy because he might have got murdered that night. So if you guys, there's no reason to continue to till. Zero. You can till on 90% of your stuff. Do all the regenerative health principles on the other 10% until you figure it out, and then transition 10 more percent, and then transition 10 more percent. Okay? I'm not telling you to quit tilling everything today, but you've got to quit tilling at least a small bit of it, because how do we build topsoil? With aggregates. What does tillage do? It destroys aggregates. You'll never build topsoil. So when you have a major wind event, topsoil gone. Are you building it? No. What's going to happen in 100 years? There will be no more topsoil. I'm sorry to have to be the one that raises his voice and jumps down your throat, but somebody has to do it. Okay? I get to be the bad guy jerk. All right? So everybody else can be the nice speaker. I'm telling you, you are destroying our planet. And unless we begin to stop, look, did I say that we are no-till on everything? Nope, we till three fields. Because my dad is the one that I'm dragging along with me, right? Okay, so I'm not telling you you have to stop everything. And the other thing is it's extremely hard in our dry and arid environments. Are we extremely profitable on everything that we've converted to regenerative agriculture? No. And you know what? It does not matter. And it does not matter because I know it's the answer for the future, and I know that we will completely destroy our farm ground if we don't stop. So what does it matter if you have $1 million in your bank account and you pull out $10,000 every year till it's all gone? Once it's gone, it's gone. And that's what we're doing with our soils. We have all this soil built up and we're just depleting it until it's gone. And then one day we're going to hand off to our grandkids soil that's completely destroyed. And the other thing is I hear this all the time. Well, that's the way Granddad did it. No. Your granddad adapted because they used to plow the ground with horses. Did your granddad plow the ground with horses? No, because he adapted. If your granddad were alive today, he would adapt. He would change, and he would take all the tools that we've learned in the last 10 years and become a better farmer. So, the new drug. Compost extract is what everybody in a dry and arid environment needs to transform their soils. Maddie, how much time do we have?
About 13 minutes.
Perfect. Okay. Compost extract is what we need in this environment to be able to transform things a lot quicker. Because what keeps biology alive is water. So when we go through a period where it does not, we went through 18 months where we did not get one moisture event of more than an inch. And we are on 3 years in a row below our annual precipitation of 16 inches a year. Like, we have not gone above that. So 2019 was an awesome year where it rained like 25 inches. I thought I was in heaven. And it has not gone back to the mecca that it was in 2019, since 2019. So this is what you really need to get going in your systems if you live in Western Kansas or Eastern Colorado, like I'm assuming most of us do. So you want to apply compost extract to your soil. Jay Young, what is compost extract? I'm so glad you asked. Compost extract is a liquid extract that you make from compost. I want you guys to get out of your head compost manure. Compost manure is not the same thing as compost extract. Okay, don't think of compost extract. If you do not know what compost, or like how to make compost extract, you need to do a YouTube search on each one of these things. Okay, so that you understand those things and you can make an informed decision on what's going to work best in your operation. Okay, I'm not going to tell you that Johnson Sioux is the best. I like it the best, but that doesn't mean it's going to work the best for you in what you're doing. All right. I put that in there for the last presentation I do. Like, you can buy it, but you can also make it extremely affordable. And don't not make it because you're intimidated. Don't make an excuse for yourself. Try to build one, figure it out. We chose Johnson Sioux because it's the most fungally dominant compost there is, and it was the first compost I found out about. So it's worked extremely well for us, and I don't see, like, I'm probably going to try to do thermal aerobic this year, just so I have more compost on hand, but that's what we've been going with. It is a fungally dominant compost. Ours had 305 species of fungus and 360 species of bacteria. Jay, are you about seeing the same thing with bacteria to fungus ratios in yours? Okay. So it only takes 1 day to make one batch, all right? And you can make these, if you have a feed truck and you don't want to add manure and you want to add your materials, you can make it out of a feed truck. I did that the first year. It went anaerobic, so I was afraid it went anaerobic because I used a feed truck, and it wasn't because I used a feed truck. So I really like this because if you're able to fill it fast, you know, with the feed truck, then it's great. Even if you're not able to afford it fast, if you have children to do it for you, that's awesome too, because then you don't have to do any work. So this has been my son Caleb and I, the one that's now 6'1", building it in 2020. This is our first one that we built. What you do is you take the shell off of a chemical. This is how we do it. You can do it, you know, David Johnson's way. You can search Johnson. He does it a different way. Take the shell off of a chemical toad, and then you line that shell with weed barrier mat, and then you put PVC pipes to where there's 8 inches to any oxygen source. All right. So that's how we made it the first year. Now what we do is we'll take that bladder out and we'll cut the top off of it, and then I'll drill a bunch of holes in the bladder, and then I'll just screw it to a wood pallet. So that when I'm taking apart three totes, I cut the middle section out of those totes and I stack those 3 like that. So if I have 3, I can make two triple stack methods like this. And then I take the 3 bladders I had out of there and I screw this to a wood pallet. So now I have 5 bioreactors from 3 totes. All right, as this breaks down, I break the straps that are off, and then it kind of breaks down to where you can just get it out of that. When you are thinking about making compost, what did you say you used in your mix?
We used oat straw and pea straw and then chicken litter.
Awesome. Who else has made a Johnson Sioux compost? All right, just me and you and Jay. All right, you guys pick his brain later on if you have time, or ask me questions and stuff about it. But the best mix that we've made is corn stalks, with 60% corn stalks, 20% grass clippings, 10% horse manure, and 10% wood chips. So they're going to get about that temperature. You want to test the temperature to make sure they're in that sweet spot. This is where it's at. When you have kids to film and you don't have to do all that hard work, that's what you want to do. But what we did is we took these lip tubs, we cut the bottom out of the lip tub, put a screen, we put our material in there, and then they had them dunk it in and out of another lip tub. Once it was nice and soaked, they put it on the top of the lid that we cut out. They put it on that, let that drain while they did another one, and then once they got 3 of them full, they'd dump the first one, and then they would go make another one. They would just rotate through those. And that was a way to where they were making sure they weren't getting too wet. This is what the corn stalks looks like going in. That's what it looks like full. That's what it's going to look like in 5 months. This is not done in 5 months. It's still got time to break down and have the worms work through that, but that's what it's going to look like in 5 months if you do it right. You can apply it as a seed treatment, in furrow and a foliar application, the seed treatment is going to be the best thing for you. And it doesn't make sense to me. I would think that in furrow is going to be better, but both David Johnson and Lance Gungerson, who I respect greatly, all say that a seed treatment is better. The reason the seed treatment works better is because the bacteria and fungal endophytes, and you'll learn this from watching James White's YouTube video. Make sure you put Dr. James White, Rutgers University, otherwise you'll get clips from the NFL player, James White. So, there's bacteria and fungal endophytes. They penetrate the seed, and somehow it changes that seed's reaction to where if it has been coated with that compost extract, it's going to shoot out a ton of exudates right at the very beginning. So you're adding the biology to the soil. So it's not just fungus and bacteria you're adding, microarthropods, okay, to your system as well. So that's a microarthropod that was in our system, or in our compost. These are just pictures of fungal hyphae. This is what it looks like underneath a microscope. Again, a moment of honesty. Something I've been intimidated by is looking at stuff under a microscope. It's something I'm going to do in the future, but don't be intimidated by all this stuff. You guys see this microarthropod? Okay, you now all know as much about a microarthropod that I do. Okay. All right, my buddy, a guy that found me on YouTube, texted me this last night saying, thanks for helping me get started with doing Johnson Sioux. We did test strips, wheat with mez, tiny little deal, wheat with no mez and no compost, and then look at all the response that had. I mean, this makes my day. Like all my hard work in teaching people on YouTube, I only need that one dude to be like, hey, look what this happened. Like that's so rewarding when one person is like, hey man, this had an impact on me. And so that's why I love doing this stuff, is seeing other farmers change and transform. All right, this is why it works. Our field, nitrogen, phosphorus, when we did this is a total nutrition digestion test that you can get done with Regen Ag Labs. So that test showed that we had 3,336 pounds of inorganic nitrogen sitting in our soil. Sorry, organic nitrogen. 3,000 pounds of organic nitrogen, but it's not plant available. 1,200 pounds of phos. 1,200 pounds of phos is the equivalency of 5,000 pounds of mez. How long will 5,000 pounds of mez last in your soil? 130 years. So I don't have to apply phosphorus. My great-great-grandkids will have to apply phosphorus. I don't have to apply it. Now, I hope that they find a better product than mez by the time that they get there, but that's up to them to figure, their generation to figure out. But right now, I'm not going to apply mez. Not because I'm greedy, I'm taking away from the stockpile that's there, but mez hinders root exudates. A plant will not put out exudates when it's in the presence of mez. It'll sense the mez and it'll be lazy and it will not take up the mez. So your root structure will not fully develop if it's in the presence of mez. And that's why Dr. Christine Jones says it's so important to eliminate phosphorus from your system. If you apply too much nitrogen, it will do the same thing. So you want to try to get it to where you're applying less than 50 pounds of nitrogen so that your roots will do the proper function. All right. This is why it works. We have 83% of the biology that was in the test of our compost make organic nitrogen in a form that the plant can take up. Though that 3,000 pounds that we have out there, that biology is going and it's taking that organic nitrogen, bringing it to the plant in the form it can take up. Same thing with phosphorus and potassium. So since we have a stockpile of those in our soils, we can greatly cut back on the amount of synthetic fertilizers that we're using. This is the below ground growth. When we don't put out any compost extract, this is the below ground growth. Look, a ton of above ground growth because of the nitrogen, no nitrogen, but compost extract, it's developing its root system. This is where our test strips were. We put 180 pounds of nitrogen on one side and 40 pounds of phos, and then on the other side got compost extract. Which is which? Which got no nitrogen, no phos? What are you pointing at? That side got what?
The no nitrogen.
You think this side has no nitrogen, you think that side has a ton of... You're shaking your head. So, vote. This side got the nitrogen. Who thinks this side got the nitrogen? Vote. Okay, 4 of you thinks that this side got the nitrogen. Who thinks that side got the nitrogen? Okay, the other half can't tell. This side got the nitrogen, this side didn't. This side was 238 bushels an acre. This side was 200 bushels an acre even. So still more profitable to do a full rate of nitrogen, except for on the test strip that you can't see in this picture, 90 pounds of nitrogen and no phos. I don't know why it says of phos. That typo. 242 bushels an acre. We were 4 bushels an acre better where we had half the nitrogen, no phos. By my calculation, that was $100 an acre more profitable on that 5-acre test strip. I'm going to just fly through those results because you can find me on YouTube and that'll give me incentive to search for the channel. So this is the first year that we cut out phos on all of our fall crops. In fact, we didn't put anything on our wheat, and I'm not going to go back unless I can find a form of phos that I think will work for what we're doing. We've cut back nitrogen in half on everything so far. Found our first earthworm. Acquired more wisdom than I ever have. I'm really proud of this because of everything my granddad and my dad have instilled in me. We won the Kansas Farm Bureau Natural Resources Award, and I really appreciate everything that my dad and my granddad have instilled in me. Looking forward to in 2022, interseeding more cover crops into corn and milo. We're gonna make some farmers contacted me and we're gonna sell. So how many of you guys farm a little bit, but you have a side job that you do? Okay, all of you guys, if you make enough compost extract and you can explain to other farmers in your area what it is, they will come and they will pay you to treat their wheat seed with your compost extract and you will make a killing. Okay, but you have to put in the time and learn what it is, be able to explain it to them, and be able to do that in a way that you're going to bring an enterprise to your farm. So I really encourage you guys that are in that situation to do that. I'm going to do more YouTube live events, and I'm going to keep looking for stuff. So this is the most important thing that I'm going to close with. Psalms 24 says, "The earth is the Lord's and all it contains, the world and those who dwell in it. For he is founded upon the seas and established upon the rivers." When I come to Colorado and I see the mountains, I'm blown away by the beauty of the mountains. When I work on my farm and I find out that there's all this fungus and bacteria within my soil that I know that God created and that I get to work with, that excites me to no end. And it just blows me away to think that we have such a beautiful creator that's able to create the mountains and he's able to put all the life within the soils. And he says that he did that from this psalm, and it's all of his. And all those who dwell in that. So that includes me. And not only that, the word says that he delights in me more than he delights in the mountains, more than he delights in the soil, more than anything he created. He loves every single person in this room more than any of it. And since I know that, and it's exciting to me, it's the most important thing that I can tell you. I can tell you all these amazing things about the soil, but it doesn't compare to a God who loves you and died for you and created you as a farmer to be able to be a good steward of the things that he created. So I encourage you guys to seek that out and to know that you can know the one that created everything and created you and loves you and died for you. And that's the most important thing I can tell you. Questions, because I know we're probably going over on time.